We're looking at it very seriously. The military is looking at it, and we're looking at some very strong options.
What does American help look like?
All options are on the table.
Israel wants regime change in Iran. They've wanted it for 20 years. Everything he just said to you was propaganda for Israel.
I let you speak your garbage jihadi Islamist propaganda.
You should know your native language.
You
though,
do not. You
pretending
do
to be
not
an
get
expert.
to talk over me.
Piers, this is serious. The estimates are between 2,000 to 12,000 people being killed in 2 days. And the people are still coming out on the streets.
If Trump carries out an attack on Iran, the Iranian retaliation will be massive.
I was here listening. I wanted to tear my own arm off so I could had something to throw at the screen. He's obviously never been punched in the face.
History will remember your lies, Piers.
In the short time since our last show, President Trump has ordered airstrikes on Islamists in Nigeria and Syria. He sent the US Delta Force to seize Venezuelan President Maduro in a stunning overnight raid. And he's out controlling the regime by video link while a naval armada lurks in the Caribbean Sea. He threatened to seize Greenland from Denmark one way or another. Mexican cartels, he says, could be bombed too. And most consequential of all, Iran is now on notice. Hundreds, if not thousands, of Iranians have been killed in the past week for protesting against the Islamic regime. Today, the president's posted cryptically that help is on its way.
Crossing your red line yet to trigger a response?
No, they're starting to, it looks like, and there seem to be some people killed that aren't supposed to be killed. These are violent, if you call them leaders, I don't know if they're leaders or just they rule through violence. But we're looking at it very seriously. The military is looking at it, and we're looking at some very strong options.
Well, the mullahs have run Iran as an Islamic dictatorship for almost 50 years. Dissent is punished by death. Women are beaten for not covering their faces. Minorities are denied housing and services. There's little dispute about any of this because the Iranian government wants its own people to know about it. Every popular uprising to date has been beaten down by one of the most formidable and ruthless security services in the world. Bodies are piled high as a warning, and eventually the protesters go home. So why will this time be any different? Well, Iran's exiled crown prince, Reza Pahlavi, says the difference is Trump.
And I think we have some serious leaders that understand what is necessary, that understand the ask of the Iranian people, and are responding to that. I think President Trump is responding to the call that the Iranian people have. The Iranian people have heard his words. They are naming streets after him in Iran. There's a difference. They know he's no Barack Obama or Joe Biden. And that's why they do have a higher expectation.
Well, there's no sane argument that the Iranian regime is good for the Iranian people, but you don't need to be an apologist for the mullahs to worry about what happens next. A regime that's spent half a century embedding itself in every community on every street corner isn't going to just vanish into thin air. And many sympathetic Americans want the president to focus on rebuilding their nation, not anybody else's. Only Trump knows what he'll do next. But right now, peace through strength is starting to look like a lot like, well, just strength. And he wants the Ayatollah to know about it. Well, we'll start this debate by talking to someone close to President Trump, the US ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee. Mike Huckabee, great to have you back on Uncensored.
Thanks, Piers. Great to be back with you.
So much going on in this year, and it's only, 2 weeks old. As we are about to talk, Donald Trump has posted to his Truth Social platform in the last few minutes, Iranian patriots, keep protesting, take over your institutions, save the names of the killers and abusers. They will pay a big price. I've cancelled all meetings with Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. Help is on its way. MAGA, make Iran great again, President Donald J. Trump. First of all, your reaction to that post. What should we read into this?
Well, I think President Trump is monitoring this situation very carefully. He's very admiring of the fact that the Iranian people are taking their country into their own hands. They recognize that if they don't stand up to the Ayatollahs, who for 47 years have made their lives a living hell, then no one is going to do it for them. I think the president is giving them encouragement that they just need to know that they're not being forgotten, that there are people who recognize that their quest for freedom is a legitimate quest. Iranian people are right now in an economic mess, For the cost of what used to buy them a car, they can barely buy a loaf of bread. They don't have water. Their government is spending all of its money throwing it away on Hamas, the Houthis, and Hezbollah, murdering people. They're the #1 state-sponsored terror organization in the world. They operate all over the world. It's not just a Middle East issue. It's not a Gulf States issue. It's a global issue. And these bad boys have not only made it difficult for people across the Middle East and the world, but they've really made it horrible for their own population. And this past summer, Piers, the Iranian people saw that their nation, which is 10 times the size of Israel, got its butt kicked by Israel in the 12-day war. And they're wondering, why don't the Iranian officials spend some money on making our country better rather than on murdering people in other countries?
What is Donald Trump going to do, do you think? Because he's making it clear in that new statement that if the killing, as he puts it, senseless killing of the protesters doesn't stop, and the Iranians, the regime's admitted at least 2,000 people have been killed. Many people on the ground believe you can add, at least 10,000 to that number, potentially more. Clearly, a lot of innocent people are getting killed here. What does
Without
Donald?
a doubt.
Sorry.
I was just saying, without a doubt, there are many. And, back in 2009 in the Green Path movement, there were like 100 people killed, and it almost toppled the regime then. We know that there are thousands who have already been killed by their government this time. So this proportionally is a much larger movement than we saw even back in that particular moment. So we're watching something that is clearly organic, that happened from within. It wasn't something that was stimulated by a foreign government. It was stimulated by the desperation of the Iranian people and by their being fed up with a government that just seemed to forget that they were hungry, they were thirsty, and their government was ignoring them and spending all their money sending big checks and weaponry to the worst terror groups in the world.
So in terms of what Donald Trump could do here, again, he says help is on its way, make Iran great again. What does that help look like? What does American help look like if the killing of the protesters continues?
It would not be for me to say. I would tell you what the White House press secretary said today when I asked that very question. She said all options are on the table. And I think that's what the president will look at, all options. What could those be? They could range anything from economic aid to military, may just be the encouragement. I wouldn't try to put a particular option in the hands of President Trump. His instincts are better than anyone's I know, and he seems to know what to do and when to do it. And time and again, he confounds the people who assume he won't do the right thing, and by golly, he ends up doing it. So I'm going to sit back myself and watch and see, but I have every confidence that when the president says something, he means it. And I think the Iranians didn't understand that in the summer. There's a saying down south, Piers, that there's no education in the second kick of a mule. And I don't think the Iranians maybe learned everything from the first kick of the mule they had last summer. And it may take a second kick of the mule. And I would just remind them there's no education in that.
That first kick of the mule, that's a great phrase, by the way, that first kick of the mule was a collaborative kick from Israel and the United States. Would Israel get actively engaged again with the United States if there were to be new military strikes against Iran?
I don't think we know. I mean, nobody at this point knows. It was very apparent, and even the Mossad indicated that they were caught off guard by the uprising. So anybody saying that this was instigated by Israel or instigated by the United States, they're saying something that just doesn't match with the reality. This has happened because the Iranian people are saying, we want to be unshackled from this oppressive and very horrible government that has made our lives terrible and that have put us in a position where we don't have food, we don't have water, we don't have a future, but boy, do we ever have missiles. And, there's a point at which people in their desperation just say, that's enough. That's what we're seeing in Iran. What Israel will do, what America will do right now is to say, what can we do to be helpful? But we don't want to get in the way of the Iranian people taking their country in their own hands. I think we all have great admiration that this is coming from them, not from someone else.
Before the cameras, before the ceremony, before history is made, every detail is chosen. From Amazon MGM Studios comes Melania. This new film takes you inside the 20 days leading up to the 2025 presidential inauguration through the eyes of the First Lady herself, where fashion isn't just style, it's strategy. Witness the image-defining decisions made behind closed doors, a celebration of duty and glamour. Melania, only in theatres, January 30. As you said earlier, Ambassador, there have been uprisings before, a number of them, that have all been quashed in the most violent and ruthless manner by the Ayatollahs. What makes this different? I've been struck by people like the German Chancellor coming out and saying this is the beginning of the end this time, and it could be just a matter of weeks before this regime topples. Others who are very expert in Iran think that is fanciful thinking, that they are so intrinsically embedded into every aspect of Iranian society that it can't happen that fast. What is your assessment of whether that is even achievable?
I think you and I both remember back in the late 80s when everyone in the world was caught off guard when the Berlin Wall came tumbling down one night, and the people of East Germany said, that's it, we're done. And over the course of the next few months, the entirety of the communist empire started falling apart and people had freedom again. Nobody would have imagined, nobody could have predicted. My gosh, if I could have predicted that, I could have predicted the stock market for the next 20 years. But why did it happen? It didn't happen because the US instigated it or because the Brits instigated it or because NATO instigated it. It happened because people finally got fed up and they were willing to risk their lives. What we're seeing on the streets of Iran, and here's what's important, it's not just in Tehran, it's in over 100 cities across this vast country. So this is not a limited issue with a few university students who are yelling and screaming and carrying signs. These are people who are now engaging in physically challenging the oppressive police and military. There may come a time very soon when some of the people in the police forces of these communities across Iran say, I'm not going to kill my neighbors so that I can somehow please a government that makes me sick too. When that moment happens, and I think we could see it soon, then it's game over.
Final question, Ambassador. There are people in the MAGA movement, many people in the MAGA movement in the United States who are a little bit confused because they voted for a man in Donald Trump who wanted to end American involvement in foreign wars. And now they're seeing potentially new strikes against Iran. They're seeing perhaps an attempt to take Greenland. They're seeing the decapitation of the leader of Venezuela, and America now, according to Donald Trump, running the country in the interim period before that is stabilized properly. Ukraine, obviously, is still going on with United States help there. And they're saying this is incompatible with what they thought they were voting for. What is your response to that?
That's a small minority of the people in the MAGA movement, because most of us who truly are the America First MAGA movement and have been since Donald Trump became president in 2016, I think what we say is, look, America first, absolutely. But that doesn't mean America only. We're not isolationists. We live in a real world. And it matters to us that people like Maduro were poisoning tens of thousands, killing tens of thousands of young Americans with illicit drugs. So the president didn't do that because he just cared about Venezuela. He did it because he cared about the sons and daughters of Americans who were dying because of this drug trafficking that was coming out of Maduro's corrupt Venezuela. President Trump has not engaged us, got us into long-lasting wars that last for 15 or 20 years. My gosh, it was less than an hour that the B-2 bombers went over Iran, bombed the ever-loving daylights out of Fordow and the nuclear sites. There were people who think they're MAGA, they're not, they're posers. And they said, Donald Trump will get us into a 20-year war. 20,000 Americans will be killed, will have boots on the ground. They look really stupid right now because that's not what happened. President Trump did not get us into a protracted war. No Americans died, and we didn't put boots on the ground. So Some of these folks just need to maybe do a little bit more reading and a little less screaming, and they would recognize that what President Trump is doing is exactly what he said he would do, and he's doing it because he is truly making America great again.
Ambassador Huckabee, always great to have you on Uncensored, as I said at the top of the interview, and I say it even more emphatically now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Piers. Great always to be with you.
Well, to debate this, I'm joined by the founder and CEO of the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, the Iranian-born former Canadian MP, Goldie Ghamari, the journalist and host of the Chuck Todd Cast, Chuck Todd, and the former US Navy SEAL, Rob O'Neill. So a powerful panel to launch our first show back this year. Cenk Uygur, Happy New Year, first of all. Let's get the pleasantries out of the way. I suspect things are about to turn unpleasant very quickly, so let's be civil to start. Cenk, I thought it was a good time to have a vacation, if I'm completely honest with you. Turned out to be one of the worst times to ever have a week off in history, where basically all hell broke loose everywhere. And as we try and wrestle with this, let's talk primarily, for the purposes of this debate, about Iran first. What do you feel about what's happening there? It does seem significant to me that the German Chancellor is now coming out saying this is the beginning of the end of the regime and it could happen in weeks. Is that your sense, that this, despite a number of repressed attempts at overthrowing this regime that have failed, that this time we might be seeing the hand of history?
Yeah, so first of all, Happy New Year back to you and to everybody on the panel. So, Piers, in this case, the most important thing to recognize is that there are two separate issues going on here. One is the Iranian people's battle with the regime. And there we support the Iranian people 100%. I would love for Iran to be a democracy, control its own country, and be a beacon for freedom in the Middle East. Well, that would be amazing. I would hope that everybody would want that. But there's a second issue also going on at the same time, which is that Israel wants regime change in Iran. They've wanted it for 20 years. They've agitated it for this entire time, including through the representatives of Israel like Mike Huckabee. He's not our ambassador, he's the Israeli ambassador. And we know that now because he had a secret meeting with Jonathan Pollard, who's a traitor to America. So he meets with traitors secretly, by the way, behind Trump's back, behind the American people's back. Everything he just said to you was propaganda for Israel. They've wanted this regime change forever. And now here's how you could tell that
Well,
I'm
that doesn't
right.
mean it's wrong.
They will not.
Cenk, it doesn't mean it's wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, it might well suit. It might
Yeah,
well
that's
suit.
right.
Well, hang on. It might well suit Israel's interests, but that doesn't mean it doesn't also suit America's interests, or indeed the rest of the world's interests.
Right. So, Piers, then we get to the issue of, yes, but what is America doing and what should America do? So if you want to accomplish the thing that we all want, which is Iran to be free, the worst possible thing you could do is bomb them. Because if you bomb them, like all countries, they will rally around the flag. If you think there is no one who supports the regime in Iran, you're also wrong about that. I think they're a minority, but they're the minority with the guns, etc. And so at this point, the idea that, oh, don't worry, we'll just bomb the Iranians, we'll kill a whole bunch of their civilians, and then we'll be greeted as liberators. You know, Mike Huckabee talked about 2 kicks of the mule, but except he got the wrong mule. So we got kicked in Iraq in the same exact way. Neocons like Mike Huckabee coming out there and going, oh, this is going to be easy. We're going to liberate the Iraqis, and the Iraqis are going to love us for it, etc. I don't need to get kicked by that mule twice. I guarantee you this will end in disaster if Israel forces us to get involved. If you care about the Iranian people, we should not bomb them. It will be greatly counterproductive. And I guarantee you that both Israel and America does not want democracy in Iran. What they want instead is a puppet leader. So they will bring in the former Shah, a king, a dictator, who will do everything that Israel wants. And then the Iranian people will revolt against him. And then we'll go through this cycle again and again and again. This is literally how we got to the Ayatollah, by us imposing a Shah upon them. So that is a disastrous idea. Do not go into this war. Anti-war means anti-war. War is not peace. George Orwell was a genius.
Okay. Goldie Ghamari, you were pulling a number of faces there, none of which I would describe as particularly indicating an agreement with what Cenk was saying. So what would you like to say?
I mean, first of all, Cenk is not Iranian, so he has no idea what's going on in occupied Iran. Pretty sure Cenk doesn't speak Persian either, so he probably has no idea what the tens of millions. No, actually, it's Persian. Persian is the English word for Farsi. So don't correct me when I'm speaking and don't interrupt me. I let you speak your garbage jihadi Islamist propaganda.
You should know your native language,
You
though,
do
if
not.
you're
You do
pretending to be
not
an
get
expert.
to talk over me. You do not get to talk over me or interrupt me when I'm speaking on behalf of 90 million Iranians who are out in the streets right now fighting for their lives.
You're not
And
speaking on behalf of all Iranians.
You speak. Yes, I am. You speak about how the bombings
When
or
did
whatever.
they elect you?
Why are you speaking over me? Why are you speaking over me? Are you threatened by what I'm about to say? Is that why you want to interrupt me? I suggest you keep your mouth shut.
No, because you're pretending
until
to
I'm done
represent people
speaking.
that never elected you.
Well, let
But
her
go
speak.
ahead.
Cenk, with all respect, she'll let you speak. Let her respond.
Yeah, I let you speak your garbage propaganda, so now it's my turn to speak the truth. So do not interrupt me again. So like I was saying, Piers, Iranians right now are literally risking their lives out there, and they are saying this is the final battle. Pahlavi will return. Pahlavi is, of course, the current Shah of Iran in exile. And what people don't know is that back in 1979, that it's not actually a revolution. It was an Islamic coup d'etat. It was orchestrated by Jimmy Carter, or sorry, actually, no, it was orchestrated by the Islamists and the communists, and it was funded and supported by Jimmy Carter, the UK, and France. So what is happening right now? This is Iranians trying to rectify, and they are rectifying, 47-year mistake that was made. And what Iranians are saying is that we are going out and we are not going to stop fighting until we not only overthrow the Islamic dictatorship, but we return our king, because there is only one person that we Iranians trust to transition us from a dictatorship to a democracy, and that is His Royal Highness. And one final point, Iran was not an authoritarian dictatorship prior to 1979. We were a constitutional monarchy, just like England. That is what we are fighting for. So anyone who says that Iran was an authoritarian dictatorship, they know nothing about the country, because we used to be a constitutional monarchy.
Today's show is sponsored by Veracity and their metabolic power protein. Let's be honest, life moves fast and regular meals sometimes don't have the punch we need. Veracity focuses on the root cause of many health issues. Metabolic health, metabolic power protein delivers 20 grams of plant-based protein in just 2 scoops without all the unnecessary sugar and calories in other products. It's all natural and developed by doctors, allowing you to get the protein you need and support your metabolism with 2 easy scoops every morning. It's also third-party tested for toxins and heavy metals. So get the protein in your diet the natural way with Veracity. Head to veracityhealth.co and use code PIERS, P-I-E-R-S, for up to 45% off your order. Once again, that's veracityhealth.co for up to 45% off, and make sure you use my promo code PIERS so they know I sent you. Chuck Todd, welcome back to Uncensored. Happy New Year.
Thank you, sir.
There's a lot going on, Chuck. Someone said to me, wow, what a week to not be on air. And I was like, the thing about Donald Trump is there's always another week and another week.
Correct.
And another week. So there's never a good week to have off in Trump land. There's an awful lot going on. You know, it's funny. I was talking to someone the other day. If you take away Trump's rhetoric, which can often be very inflammatory, and you focus on what I think is his vision here, a lot of what he's doing, whether it's Greenland, whether it's Venezuela, whether it's Iran, I can understand the argument. You know, I may not like the way he expresses himself with some of this. I understand the argument. What do you think is the overview here for Donald Trump?
Well, I think this is a case of opportunism, right? Look, I was just in the region. I was in Abu Dhabi about a month ago, which obviously is a home to quite a large Iranian diaspora. And this is before these protests got the attention. And I came away from there in my discussions and meetings with various Iranian journalists and experts. The optimism that the regime is going to fall was high then. And I had another colleague who went in country over the last 6 months. And look, there's not drinking water in Tehran, right? Like this, what you're seeing, the level of desperation with the people, I think, is at a level that we haven't been able to fully understand as, frankly, as outsiders, because of the media repression and how little we actually are seeing what's happening in country. But when you talk to Iranians that have either been in country or are communicating, you do get this sense. So this is coming. And I think this is a question, what does Donald Trump want to do? This is a bit of opportunism. I don't think he wants to get involved. Like, I think pre-protests, he was probably willing to negotiate with the regime in some form or another. Now I think he sees where the wind is blowing. And if you talk to enough folks in the Iranian diaspora, you can feel that optimism that this regime's days are numbered. But we got to remember, just like Assad in Syria, we knew his days were numbered, but are they hundreds of days? All right. Or was it going to be, 10 or 20 days? And it's possible this is still, this regime will fall, but it may not fall until this time next year at this point. But it is going to be sooner. So the question really is what role? And I think, boy, could the United States use an agency right now called USAID? Because in some ways, that was what the theory of the case behind AID is, to be there to help those that are either looking for freedom and democracy or are trying to build a fledgling democracy. And that is the best toolkit we have. And unfortunately, it's not a toolkit that it's not in the president's toolkit right now, thanks to Doge.
Okay, Rob O'Neill, a lot of the time it's worth taking a look at the amount of money being leveraged in the prediction markets, where the money's going. Looks like somebody thinks they know something, because Polymarket has a $19 million market right now on whether the Ayatollah will be deposed, and they're now saying there's a 24% chance, so pretty much a 1 in 4 chance that the Ayatollah goes here. From a military perspective, given the scale of these protests, which might well be unprecedented, we can't be entirely sure because the internet's been shut down and footage is scarce. But if it is unprecedented, do you think we're beginning to see the beginning of the end here of this regime?
Thanks for having me, and Happy New Year to everyone. I'm optimistic about it this time. We've seen it before. Excuse me. And like Chuck Todd said, it's kind of up to the media how much they're going to report on it, because we only know what we're told from over there. At least, like the first guest, I don't speak Persian or Iranian or Farsi or Urdu, so I'm going to say it in English so I don't even confuse myself. But in the past, when they see the Iranians rising up, when they get to that point, for some reason our media blocks that out, and then it seems to me, because I'm not there, and if I'm not there, I can only go by what I hear or read. Then they crack down hard, they kill people, and then it goes back to business as usual. This time, what the Iranians have seen is that we bombed a mountain, we hit them pretty hard. So hopefully, regardless of the media blackout or what our media chooses to say, the Iranian people know that we will support them. The biggest problem that we had, one of the major problems that we had in Iraq, the biggest problem being we went into Iraq, was we immediately disbanded the Ba'ath Party. And although they looked bad because they were doing what Saddam Hussein wanted, they're doing that because they want to keep their heads on their own shoulders. They're going to do what they need to do to survive and keep their family alive. We got rid of them, and then foreign fighters came in, and obviously we know the Civil War started. It was chaos for a long, long time. Right now, what's happening there, if the Iranians know that we're going to help, but then our media backs out and they're not sure about us, who knows what they're going to do? But I do know that foreign fighters are now going into Iran to try to help, be that the Mahdi army, who the Shias, or is it Hezbollah, even Hamas. I mean, they were getting funding through the Iranians, but I believe they're Sunni, and I'm not sure what's going to happen there. But I think the bottom line, and this is me just trying to be an honest broker, I think we should do as allies everything we can to support the Iranian people and help them get what they want. This is not Rob O'Neill from the United States. It's not my decision, but I would love to help the Iranian people, because I think everyone would agree they've been beaten down and oppressed for almost as long as I've been alive.
Yeah, Piers, can I quickly add something here?
Chuck,
just a piece of reporting that I got while overseas is that there's some thought that the current president, okay, and I may mess up his name, Pezeshkian, he's turned out to be at least rhetorically more moderate than some expected. And I had a source who's had somebody close to him indicating he thinks he can be the Iranian Gorbachev. Meaning, and that's a real, so if you actually ask strategically, what could the United States do? Can it start to find people that are within the regime who want to help get rid of the regime, right? Look, and who's to say that this even worked out as that well? But you do, in some cases, without Gorbachev, does the Soviet Union fall as cleanly as it fell, right? And I think so. When you're asking like, how do we deal with the next day? I think finding out whether indeed the Iranian president wants to play a role here or not is something that's the type of thing our intelligence community, in theory, should be able to help with.
Today's show is sponsored by Oxford Natural, makers of the Optimum Day and Optimum Night all-natural supplements. Thousands of Brits and Americans are already taking them with incredible results. Optimum Day boosts your energy and supports weight loss throughout the day. Optimum Night helps you relax and get deep, refreshing sleep. They have countless success stories, including from some very familiar faces. England legend Michael Owen, who lost 40 pounds, AFTV's Robbie, who lost more than 100 pounds. To watch their full stories and many more, scan the QR code on your screen or visit oxfordnatural.com/Piers. And here's the best part. Use the code Piers and get 70% off your first order. Yes, 70% off with the code Piers. I want to just turn now to someone who's been on Uncensored a few times, Mohammad Marandi, professor at Tehran University, a supporter of the regime. Welcome back to Uncensored, Mohammad Marandi. I appreciate you coming on. What is your assessment of what is happening on the ground in Iran?
Well, first of all, when you say a supporter of the regime, you're framing it in a certain way. I assume you are a supporter of the British or the American regime. But it's obvious what happened. We had currency manipulation last week. The currency fell 30–40%. It was carried out by the United States, forcing neighboring countries not to cooperate with the Iranians over the currency. Then we had peaceful protests among business people. And there were a few thousand people in 2-3 different cities. There was no violence. There were no arrests. Nothing happened. Then the next day, we had more protests, roughly the same size, I guess. I don't remember exactly. Then we had infiltration, and we had violent rioters. And that was the beginning of extreme violence, which peaked on Thursday night. And we know that Pompeo, the former head of the CIA, said that Mossad is on the ground with the rioters. We have Mossad in a Persian statement. They said that they are on the ground. And the most interesting thing of all is that late on Thursday night, during the height of the riots, and roughly 100 officers of the law were murdered. A couple of them burnt alive, beheaded, head smashed. We had a nurse who was burned alive in a clinic. The clinic was burnt down. We had many buses, ambulances, and fire engines destroyed, tens of each. I'm not sure about ambulances, but I know tens of fire engines and public buses and private property. But the point is that late on Thursday night or early in the morning, they cut off the internet and suddenly everything died down. The reason? Because all these groups, these small groups, violent groups that were spread out in different cities and different parts of big cities, they could no longer communicate with their bosses abroad. So if it was really spontaneous, the riots would have continued. But now we've had 4 days of quiet. And yesterday, we had massive anti-riot protests across the country. And I asked your producer to show footage of the protests in Tehran against the rioters. And this is from the middle of the footage. This is Engelab Square. It goes from Imam Hussein Square to Azadi Square, from Engelab Square south to Imam Khomeini Square. That is millions of people. That is huge. Anyone can look on the map or use DeepSeek or some other AI app and check what sort of distance this is. This is a helicopter. But
right,
just a few hours ago...
Just to stop you there, Professor O'May, just to be clear, that's footage you've supplied. We've been unable to independently verify it. So it is what it is. Clearly, there are people, it seems from all the independent reports I've read, who are... OK, so Goldie, for example, one of our panellists is saying that footage is from 2020. So we don't know what you're showing us there. You accept that?
No, that's a dishonest take. That footage is very clear. This misinformation is being produced by the West, and the reporter who was on that helicopter, whose face is there, he came on television, showed the footage. I was at the protest. There were millions of people. What you are trying to do, just like you did during the Israeli regime's attack on Iran, is you are trying to help war. Because when the Israeli regime carried out that blitzkrieg attack, as we were negotiating with them, you invited me and started bad-mouthing Iran. Why? Because you and many others like you.
No, I didn't bad-mouth Iran. Sorry, just to be clear.
Oh, yes, you did.
Just to be clear. Hang on. Professor, just to be clear, I never bad-mouthed Iran. I bad-mouthed the Iranian regime, which I think is one of the most malevolent regimes in the world. That's not bad-mouthing the country of Iran or the Iranian people. Now, I want to bring in Goldie Ghamari because she wants to directly challenge. She wants to directly challenge what you have said.
One-on-one.
Yes,
you said
that's
it's
fine.
A one-on-one.
That's fine.
Your producer.
But you've accused her.
You did not allow me to continue.
Fine, but you have.
Your producer said.
Yes.
It's a one-on-one between you and me.
Yes.
You're escaping the debate.
Hang on, Goldie. Hang on, Goldie. Hang on, please. Don't all talk at once. Professor Marandi. Professor Marandi.
You and me.
Professor Marandi. Let me. Goldie, please let me handle this. Professor Marandi. Here's why I brought Goldie back into the conversation with you.
No, so you're being dishonest.
Because she has said, she says to us, have you watched that footage? It is actually not what you have said it is. Goldie, tell the professor what you believe that footage is.
That footage is from Qasem Soleimani's funeral in 2020. That is not footage from today. That is 100% propaganda. The Islamic regime, they are liars. They are murderers. They are thieves. I don't even know how he has access to the internet right now. The internet is shut off. The internet is shut off. Where is he communicating from?
Okay, now, Piers, I just want to remind you that your producer said this is a one-on-one.
Yeah.
And like on previous occasions, you do not abide by what you say you'll do.
Well, you made a statement. You made a statement and gave us footage, which one of our panelists has directly challenged.
But just to respond, in the General Qasem Soleimani's funeral, the bodies were on trucks, and there are no trucks in this crowd. And the crowd goes from Imam Hussein Square, which is to the top, towards the top. The crowd here goes all the way to Imam Hussein Square. The bodies never went there. The bodies the funeral procession began at the University of Tehran. So the path of the General Soleimani funeral and his companions was not towards Imam Hussein. And here, where are the trucks? Where's the funeral procession? Because it was not just him. There were a number of people who were murdered. Don't pretend. No one can pretend that the rallies yesterday, which took place across Iran, in Mashhad, in Tabriz, in Maran, in Esfahan.
The footage rally, all been debunked.
Piers, if you next, I won't come again on your show because every time you're dishonest.
You won't be able to come again on the show because when Iran is free, we're going to get you.
To be fair, let me explain. Goldie, let me explain.
People on your hands right now.
Goldie, I will come back to Goldie and the panel in a moment. I'll go back to one-on-one. I will go back to one. Professor, I will go back to one-on-one with you now. She wanted to directly challenge that footage. She's done so, and you have responded. That is perfectly legitimate journalism from where I'm sitting.
No, that's not acceptable, Piers. In any case, just hours ago, the BBC was showing the footage of the protests across Iran against the rioters yesterday and talking about an uprising, implying dishonestly that these people on the streets who are protesting against the rioters are in fact supporters of the rioters. This is how it works in the West.
Well, the best way, surely. All right, Professor, the best way, Professor,
like this woman
Professor, the best way to
talk about.
Professor,
just one moment.
The best way to clear this up is to allow journalists to do their job freely in Iran, turn the internet back on, let everybody work out for themselves what is really happening. But when a regime shuts off the internet, what it's really doing is not trying to stop communication between protesters, it's trying to stop the truth about what it is doing in response being communicated to the world. And what it's doing is murdering thousands of Iranians who are protesting. They've admitted killing 2,000. Reports are that it may be as many as 12,000 or more. We're seeing footage here of body bags everywhere. And that is why the regime is turning off the internet. It's not out of some great altruistic, well, we just, don't want these people communicating. It's so that we can kill them and the rest of the world can't see what we're doing.
No, Piers, that is an utterly dishonest take. The numbers are fabricated. The government has not given any numbers. And as I said,
2,000.
I'm talking, Piers. You don't want me to talk.
Well, you said you're just wrong.
You are just like those journalists who are talking about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and the incubators. And
I led the campaign against that, as you may remember.
Well, you've flipped.
I haven't flipped to anything. I try and deal in facts.
No, Piers, we had rioters who burned people alive, who cut people's heads off, and it's the evidence.
And what has your regime done to the protesters?
The protesters, Piers, the millions of people that came to the streets yesterday. Why did they come to the streets? It's because your narrative is nonsense.
Well, how many protesters have been killed?
Your narrative.
How many protesters have been killed?
I don't know the numbers.
You don't
know? I do know that roughly 100 officers of the law have been murdered.
So you know how many people you believe have been killed on the regime side, but you have no idea how many people the regime's killed. Interesting.
You don't want me to talk because you're afraid. Because you're afraid that I'm going to wreck your narrative. That's cowardly, Piers.
I think what you're afraid of, afraid of this uprising this time being the one that actually topples the regime that you prop up.
You want to help, just like you were preparing as the Israeli regime carried out its blitzkrieg attack on Iran when Iran was negotiating. You were saying all sorts of nonsense about Iran to demonize the country, to justify the aggression and the slaughter, so you have blood on your hands. And this is what you're doing now today for Trump. The protesters on the streets across the country yesterday said a big no to you and your fake narratives. But people like you will just go out and say, this is fake. There was no demonstration. Whereas there were reporters in Iran. Al Jazeera was there. Many other people were there. You had Iranians across the board there. It was shown live on television, Piers. It was shown on Iranian channels live. Your producers can go back and look at the footage online as it was being shown. You cannot pretend that millions of people were not on the streets in Tehran. You cannot pretend that simultaneously millions of people were not on the streets throughout the country. It's a fact. It was shown live throughout.
I'm not sure, Professor, all due respect, I'm not sure that you and facts are easy bedfellows. But I appreciate
That's your problem, Piers.
Not really.
You're the one who
actually it may be a problem for you.
You're the one who denied the genocide in Gaza for a year and a half, and you tried to justify the actions of the Israeli regime for a year and a half. And let me be very clear that if the United States, if Trump carries out an attack on Iran, the Iranian retaliation will be massive. And people like you,
it was after the strike last summer, you mean?
People like you.
You said this last time.
You
said this last time.
People like you will bear responsibility.
But this is the trouble. You're full of crap, aren't you? Because you said this last time. Do you remember? It was all going to happen last time.
Last time, Steve Bannon, the day after the war ended, on his show, said that the reality was that during the last 3-4 days of the war, the Israeli regime was in serious trouble, and they were begging for a ceasefire.
But what happened to the retaliation that you said would happen?
And Trump, because the Israeli regime was begging
what
for a ceasefire.
What happened to your retaliation?
Did you see Tel Aviv? Did you see how we hammered Tel Aviv?
Please, it's embarrassing.
Sure.
It's embarrassing. You come on
Piers.
here all the time and you say it's going to be, the retaliation is going to be horrific. It's going to be this, it's going to be that. And it doesn't happen. Iran doesn't have the capability to respond in the way that you talk. It's all bluff. It's all bluster. And what it seems to me, Professor, now is the people of Iran have had enough of this bullshit and they're rising up. And as the German Chancellor says, I believe this is the beginning of the end of that regime, and puppets like you that have helped prop it up are going to look very stupid when that day comes. But I appreciate you joining me. Thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Lies, Piers.
I'll go back to the panel.
Piers, history will remember your lies.
Yeah, okay. I'm sure they'll remember someone's lies, and it won't be me. But thank you.
Remember your lies.
Always a pleasure to talk to you, Professor Marandi. Let's go back to the panel. Robert Neill, your reaction to that?
I had a hard time listening to it, I'll be honest, Piers. I had to mute that guy. I can always tell when I'm listening to someone who, two things, he speaks in front of people who were forced to listen to him, and he's obviously never been punched in the face. I was here listening. I wanted to tear my own arm off so I had something to throw at the screen. I mean, I'm not sure what kind of ratings that guy's going to get you. I'm serious. I don't know what he was talking about. He's a mouthpiece. He looks like the butcher of Baghdad. I wasn't listening. Can we talk about, you got another question?
Well, I think the interesting thing to me is that he, after the airstrikes in the mountain last summer, he came on and was full of the same bluster about the retaliation is going to be horrific and America will wish it had never done this, Israel wish it had never done it. And it turned out that they chucked a few fireworks at Tel Aviv and that was it. In other words, I don't think Iran has anything like the military capability he and other puppets of that regime like to pretend they do.
No, they absolutely do not. And but again, as a guy who thinks that we should not have invaded Iraq, and I was excited about it, but I think we shouldn't have. I could see getting excited about it again as a young Navy SEAL, but that's not the case now. And we definitely don't want boots on the ground.
Right.
This again has to come back to the Iranian people, but unfortunately, like your last guest, all we're getting is people screaming at each other.
Yeah.
It'd be not, if you're a regime that's turning off the internet, it's kind of a telltale sign of what's actually going on. And
and they're not doing that. As I said to him, they're not turning off the internet because they want to stop the protesters communicating. They're doing it to stop the world watching how they are treating the protesters.
Yeah. So look, the idea that the regime are good guys is absurd. So there's been Iranian propaganda here. There's been Israeli propaganda. But what I care about is the American people. And the propaganda I'm sick of is pro-war propaganda. So we've seen this movie before, and you guys are falling for it like suckers again. All this bullshit about how the Iranian people would like to be bombed and how they would love for America to conduct Israel's war for it. And we should do regime change, and it'll be easy. We'll be greeted as liberators. It'll be cheap. We won't have to put troops on the ground. Bullshit. You can't run a country from afar. At some point, you're going to have to put troops on the ground. And you know what's going to happen? They're going to get harmed. And when they get harmed, then they're going to come back on TV and say, I can't believe the Iranians did this. I can't believe the Venezuelans did this. We're going to have to hit them more. And then they're going to put in more ground troops. It never, ever works. So if you believe, Piers and everyone else, that these riots, these protests are legitimate and have nearly toppled the regime, that's wonderful. I don't like this regime. Let them keep going. But the minute you bomb them, first of all, they're going to lose all credibility on the ground. The protesters are. The regime is going to love that action. They're going to use that to rally the Iranian people to their side. It is going to be deeply counterproductive. And then if it is somehow successful in toppling the Ayatollah, I guarantee you Israel and America are going to insist that Iran be run by a different dictator. They can call him Shah, they can call him king, it doesn't matter. That brother's a dictator. And we tried it before, literally with a different Shah, with his dad. And when we tried that, it was so bad, it was so oppressive that it led to an Islamic revolution, which we've had to deal with this whole time. Every time we interfere with Iran, it creates massive blowback, and then the American people have to pay the price in blood and treasure. I've already seen this disastrous movie in Iraq. I do not want to repeat it, and I'm seeing the same exact bullshit propaganda supporting this war of regime change. And yes, it's obviously on behalf of Israel. Who are we kidding? Look at the Israelis frothing at the mouth. We've seen them for 20 years go, you have to invade Iran on our behalf. You have to invade Iran on our behalf. Okay, well, why doesn't Israel do it? And by the way, look at all this bullshit about how, the Iranians are, the regime is bad guys. Of course they are, but so was Saddam. That didn't mean we should go into Iraq. So Kim Jong-un's a terrible leader, abuses his people so badly in North Korea. How come there's no propaganda against him? Because Israel, it doesn't have North Korea within Greater Israel. So since it's not related to Israel, there's no talk of the terrible leader of North Korea. How about you guys are worried about state-sponsored terrorism? Israel is a terrorist state. So they killed 2,000 in Iran, these protesters, and I hate that the regime did that. Israel killed 70,000 Palestinians. They occupy 5.5 million of them, and they say they're never going to free them. So why are we helping a terrorist state start another disastrous war in Iraq that we're going to have, in Iran in this case, that we're going to have to pay for?
Okay.
And if people don't know this, Iran is 4 times the size of Iraq. They're walking you into another disaster, and I guarantee it, and it'll be for Israel again, and then they'll pretend that it wasn't, and they'll call everyone an anti-Semite. This, America, listen to me. This isn't our war. I hope the protesters win, but do not let these people sucker you into another multi-trillion-dollar war on behalf of Israel.
Okay. Chuck Todd, your response.
Well, I actually don't think that, I mean, I sort of, sometimes we all debate the extreme potential ideas when I don't think that's what's happening here. I think, look, as much as I am concerned that President Trump has got the YOLO virus, meaning he's more likely to do things that might not, that are politically unpopular because he wants to do it. He wants to legacy build or whatever it is, whether it's Venezuela, whether it's overthrowing the Cuban regime, Greenland, etc. Look, I think any sort of military assistance here will is more likely to backfire than not, right? That is what history has taught us. At the same time, finding a way to support these protesters is something that we should be leaning into. We're the United States of America. When people want freedom and democracy, if we're not standing by them, who is, right? That doesn't mean you do it with tanks. It doesn't mean you do it with bombs. And by the way, it's not just Israel that wants this Iranian regime gone. You know who the #1 supplier of drones is to the Russians to kill innocent Ukrainians? It's Iran. You know who else would like to see Iran gone? Pretty much the entire Gulf Peninsula, that regime gone. So this, in fairness, this is not about Israel.
So what?
Not everything is about Israel. When it comes to the Middle East, there's certainly, protecting Israel has been a priority of this country for a long time. I understand that. But in this case, this is about the Iranian regime.
Who are you kidding,
of course,
Chuck?
I'm not going to die. But the Iranian regime here is been a bad actor to a lot of people, not just the state of Israel.
Yeah. Goldie, let me bring you in here. You were born in Iran. Do you feel this is different to previous uprisings?
Yes, absolutely. This is different. This time around, the stars have aligned, Piers. So this isn't the first time that we have tried to overthrow the Islamic dictatorship. We've been trying for the last 47 years, in fact. But this time, we have a leader. We have His Royal Highness King Reza Pahlavi, who has he's heeded the call of the Iranian people. He is going to be stepping in as a transitional leader. He's going to be taking our country from a brutal Islamic dictatorship into a functioning secular democracy. Now, what type of democracy that's going to be? That's going to be based on a national referendum that the Iranian people will vote for. So whether they want a constitutional monarchy or whether they want a republic, we Iranians are going to determine that. And that plan is actually available online. It's on a website called Iran Prosperity Project. It's been online for over 6 months. I can't think of any other revolution, in fact, where the transitional plan for the emergency government has already been published and peer-reviewed and is also available in English online. There are also a number of other factors here. So Elon Musk providing Starlink and Starlink devices, that is huge because that has allowed us to continue receiving messages from people in occupied Iran despite the mass slaughter. The other really important factor as well is that President Trump is now giving his support to the Iranian people. And we're not asking for boots on the ground, nothing like that. But when you look at President Ronald Reagan's support for the oppressed people is what led to the fall of the Berlin Wall, and there were no boots on the ground there. The propaganda that Cenk is putting out there, it's the other side of the coin.
Because we didn't bomb the Soviet Union.
Can you please don't interrupt me? I did not interrupt you when you were spouting your garbage. So as I was saying, the propaganda that Cenk is putting out there, that's the other side of the coin of the Islamic dictatorship. So there, it's meant to put fear into Americans by saying, oh, well, let's go bomb Iran. Well, no one's going to go bomb Iran. Israel and the United States, back in the 12-day war, they targeted Islamic regime bases. They never targeted civilians. And in the 12-day war, yes, there were civilian casualties. 200 Iranian civilians lost their lives in the 12-day war. But in the past 2 days alone, the Islamic dictatorship has slaughtered over 12,000 Iranians. And that's at a minimum right now for what we know. So what Iranians are saying is that they will fight until the very end, because they know that at this point it's either liberty or death. And so they are still going out, they are still fighting. And the one person that has mobilized us Iranians around the world to rise up and overthrow the Islamic dictatorship is His Royal Highness King Reza Pahlavi. So, people like Cenk can complain and bark all they want, but ultimately their opinion is irrelevant. We Iranians, we've already decided what we want, and self-determination is our right.
Okay. I've got to leave it there for the panel. Thank you.
What are you talking about? No. Can I just say, she keeps pretending to speak for the Persian people. There's been no vote. She doesn't represent any of them. So some do like the Shah. I don't dispute that. I think that they're very, very mistaken in that. There's some earnest people who believe that. And then there's people who work for Israel who say, yeah, he's a perfect puppet for Israel and he should be. And then Chuck says, oh, well, the UAE also wants him gone and Turkey wants Iran gone. Why do I care about those countries? I don't care about those countries. I care about us. Can I ask Rob one last question? Rob, you're military. You were Navy SEAL Team 6.
No one even in Iran
how many military? Hold on. Let me ask Rob a question. Hey, is Israeli puppet? Hold on a second. Okay? Can I ask Rob a question?
Don't talk over each other.
Israeli puppet.
Don't talk over each other, please.
Hey, Rob, when you do enough military exercise, look, what we did in Iran was tactically amazing. What we did in Venezuela was tactically amazing. But that isn't strategy. That's tactics. But if you take enough risks, Rob, at some point, aren't you going to lose someone?
Goldie, let him finish, please.
A plane is going to get knocked down. You're going to lose some members of a Delta force, etc. And at that point, people are going to get mad. And then they're going to want bigger war and bigger retaliation. And we're going to get sucked in. Maybe I don't understand it, Rob. Rob, has the U.S. military become perfect and we can never lose anyone? There's no risk? Or are we taking significant risk here?
Yeah, Cenk, I like what you're saying as far as we're thinking outside of the box, because what happened in Venezuela was not an anomaly. It's something we can do, but with no one getting killed, no helo getting shot down, we had birds get hit. If one goes down, like you said, yes, we'll probably lose people. If one of the birds that got hit, like in Venezuela, goes down, we've had it before with Extortion 17 and Turbine 33, everyone on board dies. And then you got to go recover the body of the aircraft, and then you get the sentiment of, yes, we want to go and take more action. It's very, very dangerous. My biggest concern with Iran is I don't want the United States of Halliburton to get their boots on the ground again. And you're really towing a very, very dangerous line. Once we start sending these, we flew in with 2 stealth birds, came back with 1. One went down. We had to blow it up. We're outside all of a sudden with the locals in Abbottabad, Pakistan. Very dangerous. They don't know why we're there. The local police that are there don't know why we're there. We don't want to kill local police because we're in their country. There's so many complications that can potentially happen. That's why hopefully we can do something. The worst thing we can say that we've done, as history repeats itself, is say, well, this is the way we've always done it. Then we're going to end up with another bad war and another panel of people like us who obviously know more than everyone else solving all the problems. I think we can do something simpler. I think it obviously starts with talking with the people, negotiations, and then hopefully listening to other people. And we can, because nobody's perfectly right and nobody's perfectly wrong, but I think we all need to agree the Iranian people need to get a much better way of life they've been living for the past 47 years.
You know what? Let's end on that note of common sense and nuance. What a pleasure to hear a bit of nuance about a complex situation. Thank you to my panel. I appreciate it all very much. I'm joined now by the British-Iranian comedian and actor Omid Djalili. Omid, welcome back to...
How are you feeling after all that? Take a breath. Are you okay?
Do you know what? It was nice to end with somebody taking a slightly more nuanced view of what is a very complicated story. As it is with Venezuela, as it is with Greenland, as it is with the ICE protester who got shot. None of these things are black and white, bang, bang. And yet everyone is so tribal now. They want to immediately make it a tribal, intransigent, there is only one way to look at this story.
Yeah, that is the problem. And by doing that, we're othering people.
Yes.
In fact, majority of people, they actually even see that they can't support the people in Iran because some people say, oh dear, if we support the people of Iran, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right.
And, they are standing up to Israel, so if I support the people of Iran, I'm a Zionist. Oh dear.
Well, I was really struck.
Ridiculous.
I was really struck by the Golden Globes, that there were lots of support there for the anti-ICE protesters, lots of support for Gaza and other things. Nobody expressed any public support in Hollywood for the people of Iran. And that's exactly what you're getting at, I think. That was very telling to me.
They're othering people. It's like as if the people of Iran are expendable.
Right.
They're dispensable. It doesn't really matter, but they don't want to get involved. And that is... what we're seeing evolve in Iran is one of the most extraordinary stories of revolution of all time. I was at the Berlin Wall. I was there.
Were you?
I was actually there, knocking bits of it down because I thought it was a real moment in history.
Were you really?
I was actually there. I was 24 years old.
Well, you happened to be there, or you went out?
I went there because there was a velvet revolution in Czechoslovakia. I actually ended up living in Czechoslovakia from 1990 to 1995. I was very excited by this time in history and I wanted to be part of it. But I can tell you it was pretty... Velvet Revolution, one person died. Berlin Wall, pretty much peaceful. Piers, this is serious. The estimates are between 2,000 to 12,000 people being killed in 2 days. And you're telling me nobody cares about this? We are now seeing, and the people are still coming out on the streets. Something incredible. We're looking at something that's going to happen that's pretty seismic and the whole world...
Do we really know, Omid, what is... Given the shutdown of the internet and the paucity of the footage that we're seeing, and the ability of regime supporters like Professor Marandi, who comes on and says, here's this footage, it shows millions of people protesting in support of the regime and so on, none of which can be verified and was in fact directly challenged by one of the panelists.
Right.
But given this sort of fog of unverifiable claim and counterclaim, because there is no internet there at the moment,
5 days of it now.
Yeah, so what can we really believe? Have you spoken to anyone in Iran? Are you getting a feel for what's really happening?
A friend of mine, a brother was killed, and it's very difficult to even get information, but they said to get the body, you've got to pay what is equivalent to $5,000, which is unpayable. But very, very significantly, they had to sign a piece of paper to say that the body belonged to the security forces and he was killed by protesters. So it's that kind of propaganda that is being pushed. And I think at the end of the day, we're seeing videos. Look, I'm not the kind of person to share those kind of gory videos. I've seen them. I've hardly slept, Piers, in the last 2 weeks because I'm so invested. I should tell you, not as an Iranian, but as a human being, watching other human beings stand up to repression that's been going on for years. And frankly, this narrative that it's Israeli-led or that it's American-led, this misinformed, patronizing a narrative which is so offensive to Iranians that we've had these uprisings for years when Israel and America would have nothing to gain. This is the narrative that is pushing people to kill protesters. So I'm all for free speech, but when you're pushing this narrative, you're getting people killed.
Right, and it's why the Hollywood stars didn't want to put their head over the parapet and support Iranian people, because they have bought into a narrative that's being put out there very forcefully. This is all at the behest of Israel. And the point I made to Cenk Uygur is, well, it might be in Israel's interest, clearly. They would love to see the Ayatollah deposed and the regime got rid of. So would America. Yeah. So would many, many other people and countries around the world. This is a despicable regime.
But everybody knows that. And this moment, I would say, when we say all eyes on Iran, it's more significant than Ukraine, Russia, Venezuela, all of it put together. Short of an alien invasion and contact with aliens, this is the moment of history where if something changes here, it could change the whole landscape of the world.
Why?
Because we have a regime that funds terrorism. And this is something that people who are listening need to hear this very, very clearly. And all the people who are saying, oh, but Iran stands up to Israel. Bear in mind, there was a football match, and we're big football fans, and after October 7th, there was a football match between two of the big rivals in Iran. And a regime person came on, was waving a Palestinian flag. The football fans of Iran started singing, shove that Palestinian flag up your backside. And everyone said, this is so offensive to the people of Palestine. But no, I went on and I explained what they're shouting at is the regime official, because football fans knew their support of the Palestinian cause is non-existent. Their whole modus operandi and aim is to destroy Israel and what is in the IRGC constitution to kill all Jews everywhere. And that's fact. And that's what Iranians know. And that's the thing that we are pushing back against.
What do you think is going to happen here? Because we have seen a number of uprisings that got repelled and quashed in ruthless, violent manner by the Ayatollahs. We've seen the German Chancellor come out and say he believes this is the beginning of the end.
Yes.
And it could take just a few weeks. Do you share that optimism?
Yes, I do, because we have intelligence from people who are in the know, people like Tom Tugendhat, who was the former Minister for Security. He seems to have intelligence that the regime are actually over. These are the final death pangs of a regime. And I think that, look, at the end of the day, will it be this week? Will it be next week? Will it be up until March even? We don't know. But mullahs have been seen leaving the country. The economy is unsavable. There is no way this regime can survive. So it's a question of not if, but absolutely when. And the people have said there's the most incredible war of attrition going on. You keep killing us, but we ain't moving.
Yeah.
You're going to have to. We've seen Telegram messages today. We need some help because they're literally going to slaughter all of us.
Is the answer Reza Pahlavi, the Crown Prince? Because as people have pointed out, the Shah, his father, was overthrown himself in 1979. That precipitated the mullahs taking over. Is that the answer for Iran to go back to a constitutional monarchy with the Crown Prince?
I think that that particular revolution had something to do with 1953 and the coup with Mossadegh, and people in Iran were upset with American interference. So in a sense, the Iranians don't mind if Trump get involved because it might be righting the wrongs of the past. Even Obama said he should have done something in 2009 with the Green movement. But Reza Pahlavi, all I can tell you is he seems educated. He seems to be talking a big game with regards to transitioning Iran to a secular democracy and a democratically elected government, possibly a constitutional monarchy like Britain that is next to a secular government. And at the end of the day, the Iranian people are saying we have agency and we will decide. And I think that's the most important thing.
What Chuck Todd, former NBC anchor, was on just now saying that he's got some reporting that the president of Iran is actually a lot more moderate than people expected him to be.
Yes.
Yeah, and that actually he could end up being a Gorbachev figure in this. Is that something you could see potentially happening? I
really don't know, but one of his ideas was to pay protesters, pay all of Iran $7 a month. And I think that was, with the economy being the way it is, it was a shocking suggestion to make. And what's happening right now in Iran, they're trying to change the hearts and minds of the regime forces, saying, who are you defending? Your money is as worthless as our money, which is why we see, which is very significant, last night and the day before, many Iranian regime forces did not come out. And a lot of the killing is being done by Iraqis and people from outside the country who just paid money to kill Iranians, because Iranians themselves, very few of them will do what the Iraqis have been doing to Iranians.
I've been struck just in my own little way by the sheer volume of Iranians who've been messaging me on social media.
Incredible, yeah.
All pleading for help in getting this over the line.
Yeah.
And I've never seen anything quite like it.
It's do or die. It really is, because the Iranians have got to the point where they've got no money. They're so angry with the regime that they've been using their money for terrorism. And some countries some cities don't even have clear water. It's a moment where you see people who are actually saying we'd rather die on our feet than live on our knees.
Yeah, which is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And actually how most revolutions end up being successful.
Exactly.
When people
and well done to you. Well done to you for giving a voice to all this. I think it's absolutely fantastic.
I think it's essential. And I do think this narrative that just because Israel may stand to gain by this, therefore, if you have a position about what Israel's been doing in Gaza, you can't be supportive of the Iranian people. I think that is such a selective morally bankrupt position to take.
If that's your position, then people, you have absolutely no leg to stand on. And we will really question all your other things that you are thinking. And I think at the end of the day, if you want to stand up for the people of Iran, that's good. But any of the other cultural stuff around it, shut the hell up.
Yeah, I agree. It'd be great to see you.
Great to see you,
Thank
mate.
you very much. Piers Morgan Uncensored is proudly independent. The only boss around here is me. If you enjoy our show, we ask for only one simple thing. Hit subscribe on YouTube and follow Piers Morgan Uncensored on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And in return, we will continue our mission to inform, irritate and entertain. And we'll do it all for free. Independent, uncensored media has never been more critical, and we couldn't do it without you.